What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sunday's Coming podcast. We are here with Lindsay Van Wyk from Soul City Church.
Yeah.
Hanging out with Kaleb and I. Super excited for some of our conversation and getting to just keep talking about what we were talking about before we started recording, which I'm real excited to talk about.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, okay, just going off of that.
Yeah.
You were just in Finland.
Yes, I was just in Finland.
And I want to know about it because before we started recording, for everybody, just to jump in on our personal conversation, we're talking about saunas, cold plunges, all of the amazing things. I've never been to Finland, and it sounds like a place that I would want to go, but you had a good time.
Yeah, it was great. It was very different. I grew up in Europe for a bit, so
I did not.
Finland was like the one spot like we really didn't get to, like Norway and Denmark and
They
Sweden.
eat a lot of fish, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they love fish, and it's sad because I do not eat fish. So
Right.
it was really actually they eat a lot of reindeer. I found that out.
Did you try some of that?
No, it
did
felt
not.
weird to like go to a reindeer farm and like pet them all, and then immediately be like, "Would you like reindeer?" It felt like
is
a betrayal of sorts. But yeah, it was cool. It was different. It was very cold, very dark.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time putting on multiple layers of socks.
Are they in
and
there
pants.
dark all the time season
Not
right now?
all the time, but yeah, like the sun really didn't come up much at all. But when it did, it was only for like maybe a couple hours. So it was very different than my typical vacation. I'm a gal that take me to a beach with a margarita in my hand versus here's a snowmobile. So, which was fun.
Did you go snowmobiling?
I did.
That is
for the
cool.
first time ever.
love that.
I rocked it.
So fun.
It was so fun.
Did you get some air? Like jump something?
No. Well, sometimes, we hit some bumps, but not that extreme. But yeah, then every night you pretty much go searching for the Northern Lights.
Did you get to see him?
Well, that's the thing. No one tells you this
Okay.
until you're like there. It's very rare to like actually see them with like your bare eye.
Oh, okay.
It was the weirdest thing. Like literally they'd be like, "Oh, let's just hold our cameras up." And you would literally just open up the camera app on your phone and just hold it up and you would see something that like you couldn't
What?
Really?
see with your own eye.
That's
It was
wild.
so bizarre.
Interesting.
So I was joking. It was like, what's the Pokemon game? Like,
Oh, yeah.
gotta,
It's
like,
like
where you literally
Pokemon
have,
Go?
yeah. Pokemon
Northern
Go.
Lights Go.
The
I got a
Northern
squirrel.
Lights is really what it was. And the only pictures you could really get were like long lens exposure.
Interesting. That's so fascinating.
So it's very weird. You're kind of like, yeah, the Northern Lights are over there. And you're like, yeah, okay. And then you'd hold up your camera and be like, I know I should maybe be seeing this, but
That
I
is
don't-
so
was
wild.
not mentally prepared for that at all. I just thought like I was showing up for a light show.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
not
what I would
the
thought.
case.
That's definitely how it's sold. Right?
Exactly.
It's sold like a July 4th.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Go
amazing.
watch the fireworks
I know.
tonight and then go
Definitely
home.
not. And it depends on the temperature and the solar winds.
We're gonna get some feedback from someone who lives in like
Yeah.
the northern part of
Yeah.
the world about like how you went at the wrong time of year. or
Yeah,
something.
I'm
I
sure
have no
something.
idea.
I'm sure there's something. But yeah, so we just got back. I'm
That's
still a little
ridiculous.
jet lagged, still kind of figuring that out. But
How many hours is it?
I believe it's
Time
like
difference.
8 or 9
that's
hours
a lot.
ahead. Yeah, not
That's-
too bad. But
That's
That
enough
sounds
to
bad.
throw you off.
That's like half a day.
yeah, it was. It was
Gosh.
good.
Well,
Just
welcome
got
back.
Thanks.
Thanks for jumping on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. That's
Happy
crazy.
to be here.
We're gonna take a hard turn.
Yeah, we are.
To talk about like what do we do on this podcast? And
Yeah.
What do we talk about? Like, our conversations
do it.
are with people that do this thing called Sundays that
Mm-hmm.
help make them happen. Usually in ministry context,
Yeah.
sometimes not.
Yeah.
But bringing on voices that can share their experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right? Share their learnings, share the things that have helped them have longevity
Mm-hmm.
and success in a unique and challenging kind of role.
Yeah.
Where you have to both be looking at the immediate and also looking down the road and balancing those things with other large things that come up alongside,
yeah.
projects, initiatives, whatever. And you've done that in a lot of different contexts,
I have.
both in the church
Yeah.
and outside of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe tell us a little bit about kind of how you got involved in event production, event planning, event
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
producing,
Yeah.
and maybe some of the most memorable or like wild experiences you
Yeah.
had.
Yeah. I went to school knowing I wanted to be in events. Like I knew that from day one. Like I knew I wanted to be in events. So when I got out of college, I went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan. So tiny little Dutch Christian
I
school.
love Holland.
Oh, who doesn't love Holland,
amazing.
Michigan?
You have wooden shoes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do
I'm
too.
Dutch. I mean, you have
same.
to have wooden shoes. But I got right out of college and went straight to Willow Creek, and I was an intern, and I did their Global Leadership Summit. So immediately kind of got thrown into the event world, but also in the ministry side of things,
Right.
which was new to me. So I kind of got a taste for it in that sense. But immediately out of Willow, I knew I wanted to probably be more on the production side of things. So I applied all over the city, moved downtown, kind of without a job, trying to figure out what I was doing. And I ended up at Navy Pier and was their senior event producer for a little over 7 years, which was
And we talk about
wild.
Sundays never coming. That would be
Always
nice.
coming.
Sundays always coming. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
So it's like where you like say what you wish was true.
yeah.
Sundays never come.
I know.
coming.
Sundays are always coming.
Yeah.
I imagine at Navy Pier, it's like daily. Like events are always coming, not weekly,
Constantly.
but daily.
Constantly. Yeah. It was a world of events that like I never had experienced. I mean, I came out of college and kind of straight into it as my first like real big girl job doing events. And it was
Willow Creek wasn't a big girl job.
Oh, I mean, it was
As somebody
yeah. No, it was an intern. It was an internship.
internship. Okay, there you go.
Internship, but it was crazy. I mean, I jumped into a role with unions and
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
all
I
of
didn't think
that,
about
and I didn't learn any of it. I got my master's in hospitality and tourism management too, and I did not learn a single lick of anything about unions. So when I showed up at Navy Pier, I was like, "What do you mean my client can't plug in this outlet? Like, what do you mean there's no power on this wall? Like, it was very different for me to come in to a space where everything was run by the unions. So I had to learn very quickly what it meant to do productions downtown Chicago because it's a whole different world, just especially with the unions.
Crazy.
So I started to love it. I started creating great relationships with the unions. I knew all the stewards. I knew all the people downtown, which was great. They're fun to work with. It's also very different to be a female in the role of managing unions.
Yeah.
Usually it's a bunch of older men. But it just was so fun. I just got to the point of doing their high-end events. I did their concerts. We would do huge EDM concerts for like 12,500 people.
On the pier.
On the pier in Festival Hall. They have that big
thing, yeah.
well, not the dome. The dome itself, that's the ballroom. You could do a concert in there. We would do like more intimate concerts in there. But Festival Hall is kind of like right above their parking garage. It's a huge empty space. So we would literally have to fly everything. We'd have to build everything, stage all of it, because it was just an empty space.
crazy.
And we would get about 12,500 people in there for a full
That's
concert.
not a small amount of people.
No, but it was crazy. So we started doing that, realizing, holy cow, like the income on these things is crazy. Like the bar, I mean, even just
can't
from a
imagine.
production standpoint, like we came up with a model where we were making the pier tons of money and we just kept going with it. And so it was awesome. I fell in love with production. I fell in love with producing and the event side of things and just doing awesome big things that I was like, this is awesome. But yeah, it was a lot. I was doing probably like 40-hour weekends. I was like sleeping on my couch in my office. I was working so hard,
Man.
which was awesome. But I got to a point of being like, I'm too tired.
Let's back up for a second because you
Yeah.
talked about like sort of the value and critical nature of like relationship building
Oh yeah.
in your role, which when I think about some of the sort of 30,000 foot principles that you can pull out of that experience and, maybe someone who's in a church context leads volunteers is like leading laterally across departments in their church or, parachurch organization ministry context. Like that's something that is so applicable in any role that you're in.
Yeah.
So maybe say a little bit more about that. And maybe if you want to jump forward a little bit, because now you are in a church context, leading in a church space in a ministry setting. So like, what are some of the key ways, the key approaches, mindsets, just sort of philosophies that you were able to develop in that in that season, and then how you've been able to see them, be really valuable in a church context also?
Yeah, totally. I mean, to me, the relationships with the people that are working for you and with you are crucial. That is the key to success, really, for me. If I have a team that's going to work for me and with me, and we work together well, that that's going to set me up for success better than anything.
Yeah.
And so when I started at Navy Pier and I was like, these union guys, I need on my side. Because if I make them mad or if we don't work well together, this is going to cost the client more money.
Yeah.
It's going to cost me relationships. And how can I like take care of my clients in the best way of making sure that they're taken care of? And exactly, that's how it is now. So now as the service and event producer at Navy Pier, or not at Navy Pier, oh my gosh, I'm not at Navy Pier anymore. I'm at Soul City Church. But Soul City is, we're fully, our entire booth is run by volunteers. So we don't really have contractors in any capacity, which I think is very different. I know not all churches can say that. But we have spent so much time developing our volunteers and developing our team to make sure that we're working well together so that at the end, it's making me look good when they're doing well.
And volunteers are kind of like union guys in the sense that they can just walk away.
They can.
They can just walk away.
I don't want to plug in that cable. I'm out,
No, I'm done.
So like, what are some of the things when you think about whether in your relationship with volunteers, relationship with your union teams or whatever, like when you say, okay, the most important thing is building that trust, that relationship.
Yeah.
When you're just meeting someone for the first time, interacting, like, what are you doing to say, hey, here's how I'm going to intentionally build trust with this person?
Yeah, that's the thing is I always, first and foremost, focus on their spiritual growth over what they can do for me. If I'm meeting with a volunteer for a first time, I'm not sitting there asking, what are you good at? And how can I get you plugged in? And do you want to come shadow? And here's a camera, like hold this. And it has nothing to do with that first. The first step is, how long have you been at Soul City? Like why are you wanting to get involved? Because we also don't want to get to a spot of volunteers feeling like they're obligated to be there or burnout or any of that. So for me, my main focus is their well-being versus what they can do for me. And I think we do get a lot of people that come into Soul City with a lot of church hurt and hurt just around volunteering. And I've had volunteers that have been like, I haven't even stepped foot in a church in 2 years because I have like just trauma from volunteering at churches in the past and kind of how I was treated. And that to me is just not the purpose of it. So I always try to focus first and foremost on just them and my relationship with them versus how can you step into a role and help me in this. And also if I don't feel like you're ready and you just need to like have coffee and talk with somebody, I'm not going to put you in a spot until I feel like you're in a good spiritual spot to be able to give up Sunday. Cause that's a lot too. We're asking them we have 3 services on a Sunday. So our team is there from like 6:30 till 1:30, 2:00-ish. That's a long day. That's 3 services. And if they're not happy to be there or excited to be there or feeling like they have to be there, that's not gonna it's not gonna end well for
that's so
them,
interesting.
that's for sure.
It's interesting too. Like I don't know if I have heard, we hear all the time staff burnout.
Oh yeah.
Staff church hurt, trauma. I have many experiences of that. But I don't hear it very often from the volunteer standpoint.
Oh yeah.
And I think it would be but I know it's there. I know it's real.
Huge.
Yeah.
The taking advantage or not, of a volunteer in your space. I mean, we were talking some guys last week we were at a church with, and it was like, they have Friday night service, Saturday services, 3 on Sunday morning, 1 on Sunday night. And I'm like, dude, how in the world are you guys going to be able to do that in the context without completely killing either your staff or your teams or both? Because it's like, I just don't how to even approach that. But I think
even just like the posture and just like the tone that you talk to volunteers, I just think of times I've heard volunteers in different contexts talk about how like they felt like they couldn't say no. Or they felt like they were letting someone down. Or it's like creating that culture of freedom of like the what you're doing for the church should be a joy and like you're excited to do it and it's not a burden. And so sometimes that means that like I'm ready to go and like I'm in a space where I can do a lot. Sometimes it means like, hey, I need to kind of step back or do less. And as people that are charged with leading those volunteers and kind of shepherding that community of the church, are we creating a place where they kind of volunteering becomes a burden or a pressure versus like a life-giving, joy-filled thing?
Exactly.
And like for ministry leaders to just kind of reflect on, what is the tone of your interaction with a volunteer? What is the like the language that you use in that email. Like, are you kind of subtly digging them because they weren't coming on Sunday? Like, or are you cheering them on because they get, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing with my family. Oh, hope you have fun on your family trip. Like,
no, it's totally. And when we start onboarding our volunteers, I always explain to them, there's no expectation that you serve X amount of times.
Yeah.
I actually won't even put you on the calendar more than once a month. Like, I won't do that because I know you need to go get spiritually fed in a way that you can't necessarily do when you're running a booth or you're running graphics or whatnot. You're so focused. But it's the tone. And I always try to make sure too that every time I'm reaching out to my volunteers, that not every single time I'm just reaching out, it's, hey, what's your availability? Hey,
that's not the
what are you doing?
touch
Yeah.
point. That's good.
Hey, how is your week? Like, hey, we're going to have a get together and we're going to all go get coffee or we're all going to get a drink.
Yeah.
Come on by. Like, let's do something fun. It actually makes me feel like, if I'm like only
that's really good.
touching base with them, to be like, hi, here's your availability form. Please fill it out and like let me know when you can help me. Yep. That's not. And I feel I just don't love that. So it's all about that interaction and like what's the relationship you're building.
And I'm sure like small churches, if you're we're kind of talking about production, but it could be anywhere in any church ministry area.
100%.
But like it can be easy to be like, well, that's nice for you. You can only schedule your volunteers once a month because you have a bench. I only have one volunteer and they have to be here every week,
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's like, even in that, because like my current church context is small church.
Yeah.
Right. And so to say, hey, we actually are focused on the well-being of the people to the extent that it's okay if what we do on any given Sunday actually adjusts based on the team.
Yeah.
So if I was running 3 cameras and this week I'm running 2 cameras, like that's fine.
Yeah. And that's too, is if you're in small church context, we have one amazing volunteer, Kaleb. He is actually, that's funny.
Wow.
What? Wow. Where is he?
Think of a better person's name to be amazing volunteer.
Just bring him in. The 3 Kalebs can talk about it. He's phenomenal. He is our rock star. He comes every Sunday. Yeah. No question. We could even be like, Kaleb, don't come this Sunday. And he will show up. That's awesome. He is amazing. But we are very aware of that. Like this, he's going to keep showing up. But we find, what are other ways then that we can give back to him? Like, what can we do to make sure that he's growing and feeling supported by us versus like a burnout type situation? So like we've signed him up for a Philo cohort. Like, here you go. We're going to pay for you to go to this to try to like get a community around this and to like get spiritually fed and have a group of people that you can talk to about these things. So it's not just us being like, well, he decides to show up every week. Yeah. Great. It's no, how can we like give back to them and like invest in him?
What I love about that is it's not a one size fits all of like, hey, our thing is you serve once a month and that's our, it's like, that's right for some people. And the reality is that some people are in a season where actually they are just energized by the idea of serving every week.
Yep. Yeah.
And so to be able to kind of approach and interact with each volunteer individually and uniquely and like where they're at in their current season of life. Versus sort of a cookie cutter policy or a cookie cutter approach, and saying like, I love that idea of uniquely investing in that person because of where they are, what their passions are. Like that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I think of the last 3 churches that I was on staff at. And when I came on staff, there's always these existing volunteers that have been, especially in the absence of a staff member, which so many churches are either where they're short staffed, they're hiring somebody, whatever. That they've been filling that full-time role. And when you walk in day one, they are not doing well. Like they are like, praise the Lord, here you go. I'm ready to walk away now. Or like the frustration of that can be so high. And I think like it's hard to manage that. And like the long term of like, how do we manage some of those people that have been there forever and then kind of turn that perspective of going, hey, you should, whether it's take a Sunday off or don't be here, or how do we do it in a different context of not going. I love the, hey, I'm not just reaching out for availability because I'm so guilty. Like I was so guilty of that all the time.
Yeah.
Because you get so in your own world as a staff member.
Because Sunday's always coming.
Because Sunday's
always coming. And you're always looking at how many people are not in the planning center.
Correct.
Stressing out about it.
And, all of this stuff. And so it's like, how do you, change that perspective shift? And man, another thing you said, it was like, if you're only serving to be at the church, like it's very apparent. And it became really clear to me of volunteers that I wouldn't see them unless they were serving. Like the only reason they would show up to church, whether it was once a month, twice a month, whatever, was only if they were on a camera or doing something or serving in that context. And that's not healthy either. And like wanting to, I just like the way you guys are approaching it of going, how long have you been here? How long have you been doing this versus, hey, I just came from blank church down the street. I was doing this and I want to do that here today.
Yeah, right.
You know, when you...
Right. It's all about it. It's all about developing those relationships. And yeah, like you said, like coming in sometimes it's the structure is something that they may not be used to or just,
well, then I think about it like your union guys. Like, how do you get that guy on your side?
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to have the institutional knowledge and like the history of stuff. And it's, you know, bringing them in to join your team and to like feel valued.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
100%.
I'm not going to win without your help.
Yeah.
So like, what do I need to know?
Well,
how can we be partners in this, you know?
Yeah.
And not making them feel like, oh, my time's done. I'm just pushed to the side. And, you know.
Well, it's all about like understanding too that they have a job, and that's like with the unions. Like there were always like some stickler guys that like my production managers would be like, no, that guy, he's like, we don't get along, and I'd be like, watch me, like I'd be like, I got this guy in my pocket. Well, because as long as you have a conversation with them, you treat them as a human, you understand that they are there and they are there to do a specific task.
Yeah.
And if you guys are on the same page and you understand that they have meal breaks and you respect that and you don't complain about it, you don't like give them a hard time for taking a quick second for a break or something. They're doing physical labor. Like, it's not like they're sitting and twiddling their thumbs, but once you get on that page, they have a whole new respect for you. And then when you know what you're talking about, that's the other thing is I had to sit there and study my union rules. Like I had to sit there and be like, okay, I know that this is what they need. And I would check in regularly to be like, hey, I know your lunch break is coming up in an hour. Like, how are you feeling? Do we need to add more time? Do you feel good? And that when they understood that I was looking out for them, I understood the rules. They had a whole different respect for me. So I see that too going into ministry even, because dealing with other ministries within Soul City, yes, Sundays are always coming. And in my mind, Sundays are the service, right?
Yep.
Like it's the message, it's the worship, but there's other ministries that are doing other things that aren't involved in my room.
Yeah.
So I always have to know what's going on in the building. I have to know what they're doing. I have to respect what they're doing, be fully educated so that if I have a service that's running over, I'm not putting another colleague in a bad position because she's wrangling children for an extra like half hour that we didn't account for.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just being on that team and having those relationships that are going to set you up, but then like actually everyone else, then it's just a good way to, I don't know, work together, I guess.
Yeah. That's such a hard, I remember those, children's pastors texting me, are you guys almost done? Because we have some bad things going on here in children's ministry and we need to get these children to their parents' arms because it's bad. And like being aware of it. And like, I love I'm familiar with unions enough to know like that meal break or that 15-minute, whatever they get. I don't remember how many, every other hour or whatever, is a really big deal. And understanding for them that, hey, this other person who I'm working with adjacently or whatever understands my context, whether that's in a union or a ministry context is so huge because it's like, man, it can break apart staffs. Like I've seen so often in ministry contexts of just going, man, there is a massive divide between whether it's the weekend experience people or operations or children and youth and all this stuff. And like, man, like even just thinking about that, like so many instances in my own life that, I butted up against some department because I wanted something done my way. And the reality is some youth pastor just wanted to use our space so that they could have more kids in the room or whatever it is, and like understanding that we're all like shooting for the same thing. Like we all want Sundays to be amazing. We all want our ministries to be amazing and people to, come to know Jesus more because of the work we're doing in whatever, context that is.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. I want to go back though to Navy Pier and talk about how you keep it all straight, right? Because you're having to plan, organize, get teams together for these things that are happening, not nicely separated, but like overlapping in various ways at the same time. You're working on one thing, prepping the next thing, envisioning the next thing.
Yeah.
So what were the tools or the mindsets or the practices that kind of helped you organize that?
Yeah.
And then like, I just think that tool, it's very easy in a ministry context, especially in sort of like the worship creative space, to always feel like you're behind the ball from a planning, organization, even just like, what are we doing 2 months from now kind of standpoint. And, you know, in your Navy Pier context, you're doing that on a massive scale.
Oh yeah.
With, you know, events that are going to host thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So I would imagine there are some approaches and skills and techniques that are very transferable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, when I was at the Pier, I would have a massive stack of folders, and each folder was an event. And it was like just handed to you. You're like, here's the concert. Here is like literally you name it. Like they just would drop it. Like here's an art expo. Here's a charity event. Here is a graduation. Here is a prom. Here, everything. You name it, we did it. But it was a moment of like, okay, how am I going to keep my brain straight?
Yeah.
And how am I going to keep this straight? And it is very transferable, because like I'm thinking right now, like I was just having this conversation yesterday. We have Easter coming. Yeah. Easter's coming up. And that is a huge, it's the Super Bowl of church world. And then we have Soul City is starting a campaign called Greater Things, because we're launching a second location.
Okay.
So we have that starting the weekend after Easter. So I am holding Easter and I'm holding a campaign like on top of the campaign events.
Yeah.
And we've got volunteer appreciation, and we still have Sundays that continuously that we still have to keep planning for. So it's for me, it's how I just organize my brain. I am such a visual person that the amount of Post-it notes, pieces of paper that I write down everything that I have to do and just kind of get it all split up and go through priorities. What is the priority? What can I kill two birds with one stone?
Yeah.
If I'm having one meeting about Easter and I also need to talk about Greater Things, how can I combine that? But also it's delegating. Like I'm in a season of, I'm holding a lot as a service and event producer, because a campaign has a lot to do with services and events. Same with Easter. So how can I go to my team, who I have, again, was just talking about how you just kind of create those relationships so that they're there to help you when you need it. And if you ask them, that they'll show up. But it's, how do I delegate this? Because there's no way I can do this by myself. Yeah. So it's just recognizing that I can't do it by myself, which is hard as somebody that's very controlling. And it's my role to like make sure everything. 6 baby. But it's hard. So to be able to take a look at what's coming and to really prioritize, what do I need to do now? What is top priority? What is maybe something that we're trying to do that maybe is not realistic, and we should probably take a step back and focus on what's more important. Yeah. There's a lot of times where I'll even take a look at a Sunday and I'll be like, we are trying too much. Yeah. We are trying to do too many things. There's too many announcements. Yeah. There's not enough worship. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, yes, the announcements are important. Yes, all of the to-dos within a Sunday are important. But at the end of the day, it's all about leading people to Jesus and the experience that they're having with the Holy Spirit in a service. And if we're sitting there talking to them for 12 minutes about something, it's how is that benefiting them? Like what's the purpose behind it? Like, is it
just willing to be able to look at everything objectively?
Yes.
And not just assume like, because we've done it this way, or because it's on it's in planning center, we're just going to do it. Like, let's actually kind of be critical and be willing to adjust things. And even it sounds like from the standpoint of, do we have margin to do this well? Yeah. It's better to probably simplify than to try to kill your team and do everything a little bit with less quality because you're doing more than is actually feasible to take on.
100%. And it's a balancing act in that. And also what is going to set us up for success? Like what is not going to kill us? Because at the end of the day, if we're burnt out, we're not going to be able to open up a second church. Yes. We're not gonna be able to do that. Yes. We need to be able to lean on each other and know, okay, we did this and we right-sized it. Yeah, yeah. So that it's not killing us and it's setting us up for success. And then also, how can we pre-plan that? Like we're talking about Easter right now and like just the load in of Easter. And I'm like, what can we pre-rig? What can we do so that the flip that week isn't killing us more than it needs to be? How can we prepare for that? Versus let's just focus on Easter when it's the week before. No. Let's take a look out. How are we preparing ourselves in a better way? Like I'm thinking from a decor standpoint. I'm in charge of all the decor in the building too. What can I start already doing in a back closet or somewhere that I can literally just, it's just all about taking a look at it and being like, how can I set us up for success so that we're not killing us to do that.
That's good.
And I think it's setting yourself up in advance because it's easy to either in the moment go, we're going to kill ourselves to do it, or we're just not going to do it at all because we're tired or we don't want to do it. And it's not out of laziness that you're, wanting to do that. It's so that you can actually do some stuff, but in a timeline and in a fashion that doesn't, destroy the integrity of whatever the thing you're like looking to go towards.
100%.
Because it's very, very, very easy to, we talked about this in another recording of just being able to, people say no because of the difficulty or the waves and seasons that they see in ministry go up and down. They go, I'm going to have another crazy season coming up. I'm just going to not do this because I want to take it easy now or whatever that looks like. And so, that's a lot like leading into both of those things.
It is.
So like knowing that like you're trying to plan that out, how do you get to a point though with even like leadership where they go, hey, Lyndsey, we want to launch a campaign the week after Easter.
Yeah.
How do those conversations even go?
Yeah.
And because, I'm imagining whether it's myself in my personal context or yours or anybody listening of going, well, I've tried that with my blank executive team or whatever. It doesn't work. And it's like I think people sometimes get this perspective of it's a my way or the highway. In some contexts it is, honestly. But for you specifically, how was that? Even like some of that conversation leading up to, hey, we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
Does that sound crazy or not? And then obviously you landed on it. So like, how did that get there?
No, I think our leadership team is phenomenal. We know the nice thing is I look at our leadership team, I look at my boss, and I know that they fully support me and they would never put me in a position that like would break me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like even leading up to it a couple weeks ago, I had a meeting with our executive pastor and she was even like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling from Easter into greater things? What can I do to support you? How can we support? What do you need right now? Like all the time. We get constant check-ins from leadership about what we need.
That's great.
How it's going, how they can support. And we do that. I mean, even every other week in our like all staff meeting, it's all right, give us an update and how are we going to be expected to help? It's all in. That's the thing is a lot of it like right now is sitting with the creative team and our executive team. And, there's some ministries that are still, their season is coming, but like right now we're kind of, we're leading the charge. We just know that it's a team, it's an all team effort. So if I'm not in a good headspace, it's not going to help the team. So our executive team has been really good with checking in with us and just making sure, how are you doing? That's not in a sense of like, how is the campaign going or how is Easter going? It's a no, like, how are you actually doing spiritually? How are you doing mentally, emotionally? Like it's just always like the top of mind. That's how we start off. Like that's how we start off every single meeting. It's how are you actually doing versus what are the tasks that need to be done? So I feel that support and we know that it's a crazy season. So it's just, we're all buckling down right now. And
that's such a good reminder for like any team leaders or executive staff that are listening to this of like, hey, are you checking in with your teams? Are you asking, is this manageable? How can we support? Like, that's always something to keep in the forefront of your mind. But the thing that I think actually gets sometimes missed is that only works if the person you're checking in with, the staff person or the volunteer or whatever, is honest in their response. So like, if you're someone who's like, my team doesn't support me, my executive leadership or my boss is not like listening to me, it's okay. Are you coming to those conversations and being honest about what you need? Hey, this feels like too much. We need to rethink this. Here's what I could actually use that would resource me better. And so it's easy to just complain about how things are challenging, but like, did you actually come to leadership with a plan of like, hey, here's how we could actually do this effectively.
Totally. Yeah.
Here's the training. Here's the resources. Here's the team that I would need to get this done in a helpful way versus just being like, you know, they're not helping me. Well,
it's
are you
building that trust?
Yeah.
It's building that trust with the team. And our team at Soul City has worked very hard over the past, since 2020, since we had some restructuring going on. There was a lot of trust that was lost. Like we went through some things, but we have spent development days and time building that trust back up so that when we do go into those meetings, that we can come full-heartedly and be like, listen, no, things aren't good. Here's where I'm at and here's what I need. Yeah. And that doesn't just happen. Yeah. That's just not, it's not just easy. You have to take the time to build that trust with
and
your
it's
team.
It's stewarded in every conversation because you know, if a leader is not asking, they're not demonstrating that care and interest in what the experience is. If that you know, staff person is not being honest, they're not participating in the way that they can to kind of build that team culture. But if that staff person is honest, say the leader asks, the staff person shares, and then the leader doesn't act on it. Yeah. Well, now it's like you're breaking that trust again. I came and leadership didn't care. They said they cared, but they didn't actually follow through. Yeah. And so like that kind of flywheel, that reciprocal relationship has to be stewarded in every single conversation. Because, you know, it only takes one or two to kind of derail that whole relationship.
100%. You have to be vulnerable in it. And if you're exposing your vulnerability and you're coming out and saying like, this is how I feel, and nothing is done with it, you're kind of like, okay, well then I'm going to close back up again. Yeah. Like I'm not going to be vulnerable with you again if you're going to just not listen to what I'm saying.
And that's not to say that leaders have to like just snap their fingers and do everything. But like to respond in an honest way of, hey, I hear what you're saying. We can do these things. I got to be honest with you. Like the thing over here, like we can't do right now. Yeah. But you're having that honest dialogue about what's realistic and what steps are possible versus either not talking at all or just blowing it off or promising something and not delivering. Like it's way better to tell someone, hey, we can't do that right now than to be like, oh yeah, we're going to jump on that. And then nothing happens. Right. It just goes quiet.
Right.
You know?
And it's just it's honestly just about even if you can't do anything, it's following up that next check-in or that next day. Like, hey, how are you feeling today? I know we had like a vulnerable moment yesterday. I know you were like really coming to me with things. Like, how are you feeling today? Like, you know, and just continue. Like, don't just let it go. Like, they were vulnerable with me once. I couldn't do anything. Here's what we tried to do. Keep it on the forefront of your mind as leader. And that's even how it is with volunteers too. Not even like high-end executive leadership. Like for me with volunteers, if I have a volunteer that walks in on a Sunday and is having a rough day, I'm not just going to be like, well, whatever. Like, can you please just like upload the script into the prompter and like, we'll talk about it later. It's no, this is what's first. Like, I would rather you come to me vulnerable and tell me that and us have a conversation instead of you coming again and just doing what you need to do. Yeah. Because then they're not going to come to me with issues. They're not going to come to me with problems. Like that trust, that vulnerability is gone as a leader. So even from executive leadership, but all the way down to like, if you're managing a team on a Sunday or even not on a Sunday, it's that vulnerability with them because now you're opening the door to be able to actually feed their spirit and like pray for them and be with them. And that's what we're there for ultimately. And if they feel like they're walking into a Sunday in and out, not being seen or appreciated, that's going to lead to burnout. That's going to lead to resentment. Yep. And you need to be able to give back to those people because they're the ones that get your Sunday done.
Correct.
Without those people in that booth, correct. I cannot run that booth by myself. I have tried. It just not go well. You don't want me touching audio. Yeah. Like they are the people that set you up for success. So if they're not being spiritually transformed, then it's not going to work. The mission's not going to work.
Man, it's so true. And I think it's, even like when you were, talking about like a super volunteer culture, right? Like on a weekend experience. I think so many churches, I mean, I've personally seen so many churches even pivot from that post-COVID. Like they got used to whether it was a contractor during pre-recording, doing all of these things, and then that became this normal that almost like whether some of those positions got replaced with staff members or permanent contractors. Some of that has been lost because then it's very easy to be a non-relationship type environment because it's just, hey, I'm just booking you to do this thing on Sunday, whether it's play guitar or mix or do something. And having that context of just going, hey, this is, I understand you're going through something and talk about it and let's hang out and, chat more about it. Cause I think, even circling back to the, some of the stuff with your like staff and walking through like, hey, how are you actually doing? It's interesting. Like, I think over time, I've just realized like just people's personalities are so different in how they have to even receive that information or to ingest it and then go, I don't know right now how to answer you. I need a day or whatever that is to think and process versus being like my personality could just be like, just tell me right now. And people don't respond that way. Everybody's different. So just understanding like, hey, what is that context with your staff, with your volunteers, with your executive team, and knowing like what they need or how they need to hear something to be able to actually be received well. Because I could say that, hey, you're my boss. I could leave a meeting going, I told her that I'm not feeling that it's not going well. And you might perceive it because I was beating around the bush or whatever, like he's doing okay, And so like the honesty and transparency that is so like necessary, that is very easy to not do because of a fear of leadership, because of a fear of, I'm being told to do something, like all of that stuff, that's my Enneagram 6 of anxiety.
I feel you.
It's just tricky.
Yeah,
giving people space to process. No conversation is ever a one-time conversation, right?
Right.
It's like you're always planting seeds for the next level and the next level, and like understanding more and digging deeper.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're getting at too. Is I might ask you today, and you might have some thoughts, but at the end of that conversation, I say, hey, that's really great. Thanks for sharing. Think about it more. And let's talk about it again next week. It just kind of.
And the more you do that, the more it's ingrained in your culture. The more you do that, and the more you have those conversations and the follow-ups, and then it just continues to get ingrained into that culture, and it becomes something that you just do. It's like the norm then, but it does take time and it takes trust. But
it's there's a guy Kaleb and I work with, and one of the things that he says often is like, I'm walking in this meeting like completely unoffendable as the leader, right? And going, hey, you can tell me whatever you want, right? I don't know if you've ever read Creativity Inc. by
Ed Catmull.
Ed Catmull, yes. It's very similar. That environment at Pixar for them was you can walk in and say whatever the crap you want to anybody. Obviously, there's context, and let's have conversations whether you're angry or not. But like, I've never, I don't think I've ever been the one as the leader being able to go, hey, I'm going to be unoffendable in the moment to receive this information, as I tend to be more guarded in some of those contexts. But for that, when I was told that for the first time, I was like, I think I can actually be transparent here. And actually honest about the way that I'm feeling, regardless of how it's going to come across. And that freedom as the person receiving that, hey man, I'm unoffendable right now in this moment. And to call it out. And that could be not only in a ministry context, in any other career, in your marriage, in your relationships, like whatever, going, hey, just tell me, shoot me straight, or, right now. No different than, a close friend or accountability partner or whatever.
But again, like we were saying earlier, that leader who's saying that that safe space exists is basically stewarding it in every conversation. Because if you say you can't offend me and you can't hurt my feelings, you better follow up on that. Like you better, that better be true. Because it only takes one or two conversations with that not being true to be like, well, that's not real. So I think that's exactly right. As the leader to come in and say, you can't offend me and you can't hurt my feelings, and to stick to that. Whether that means you are able to, dialogue in the conversation right then, or you have to say, hey, like what you're bringing right now is something that we need to kind of think about and develop, kind of circle back on. But the posture is always going to be non-defensive, non-confrontational, not trying to defend yourself and fight back, like that. Hey, I'm able to receive and process and hear your honest experience. And we're going to move forward in a helpful way. But if you want to hear the truth, you got to create space for the truth.
That's hard.
It is. And I think it's just, it's creating like an actual open level of honesty that, regardless if I'm walking into a room to only tell you something that I'm frustrated about every time, because that doesn't happen every time, but it's like an actual honest representation of like where I'm at. And I think so often that, man, just somebody being able to receive it, it's no different than going to therapy, right? I'm not saying your boss is your therapist at all, but the ability to speak honestly and openly, just going, hey, even if nothing comes out of this conversation, but I'm telling you how I feel, I walk out of that room feeling better, whether nothing changed in
you
any
got
way.
it off your chest.
Yeah, you got it off your chest, and it's not talking to your spouse or to anybody else or a peer about your frustrations. It's going, hey, at least they heard me, or whatever. Because without feeling heard, lots of things tend to go very, very wrong.
Oh yeah,
in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So looking at like post Easter campaign, like building is coming up for you guys. Like what other things are you, like I would say actively right now feeling like whether you're juggling or things that are on the horizon that you're just like, hey, these are the areas and the direction that we want to, run in maybe as a church or you individually.
Yeah. I mean, I think the second location, that's big. I mean, we just announced that in November of last year, and we're hoping to have that open by November of this year. Oh, so we are moving
fast.
very fast, very fast. So it's a season of Soul City's growing like crazy, which is phenomenal. We are seeing things happen every Sunday that we are only God things. Like we baptized over 65 people a couple Sundays ago in one Sunday.
Crazy.
And that is a Soul City like record. Like it was crazy. We're really seeing a movement at Soul City. So the space of opening the second location is very exciting, very intimidating. We tried to do this back right in 2019, right before COVID hit. We tried to open 2 locations. Okay. So we had a whole campaign that was starting, and we had to stop it because COVID hit.
Yeah, sure.
So we're kind of in a space of, okay, we're going to try this again. And it's a little scary because the last time we tried this, it did not go well. A global pandemic hit, but it's exciting, but it is intimidating and scary to think, okay, we're gonna be pushing really hard. Like we're gonna be doing some spiritual battle, to be honest, to like get this second location open. But really, it's just making sure that again, this is kind of going back to our people and the people of Soul City is that they are well taken care of. Yes, we were trying to open a second location so that we can continue to spread Soul City's word and God's word and all the things. But it's making sure that our people don't feel like, oh, you're the stepchild, or we're opening up another location, so you guys aren't as important, or we're just asking for money, or like any of that, because that's attention. Like we're inviting people to step into something, and that can be uncomfortable for some people.
Oh yeah.
It could be uncomfortable for staff. It could be uncomfortable for volunteers. It's a very interesting space. So looking forward, it's kind of, how are we going to do this campaign but still take care of our people?
Yeah.
And not lose sight of the people that are here, because these are the OGs. These are the people that are here at Soul City in the West Loop. And how are we empowering them to step forward to help us launch this second one? But really it's for me, I'm always just looking on how I can continue to make things on Sundays easier and better and more powerful and impactful as best we can.
Yeah.
And that is, it's challenging when you have a lot of announcements about campaigns and Easter, and your messages are pretty like structured to the campaign. And so it's holding that tension of wanting to push the ministry forward and like getting our worship in and the transformation space in, but it's hard when it's also like, but we have to like talk about the campaign.
Yeah.
So it's looking forward, making sure that our people are taken care of, making sure that Sundays still feel powerful, and that we're not dropping that in the chaos of everything else that's going on.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's, you guys are downtown Chicago. I live in the far suburbs. If anybody knows Chicagoland,
it's not really Chicago.
Yeah, not
exactly.
Really
That's what everybody
Don't
says.
Call it
Anybody
Chicago.
who lives in Chicago is like, you don't even live here. You live in Iowa. Is
You
what they
practically do.
How do you think that? Because I haven't been a part of a city church. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, are there different dynamics? Versus, even when you were out farther, even just like at GLS, you got a taste of more suburbia, right? In Barrington.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything that plays to that, whether it's in the campaign or even volunteers or like personalities that are walking in that are just very different, even the season of where the world is at today,
Yeah.
and being in Chicago.
Yeah, we have an extremely diverse church. Like you walk in, and it is every race, it is every gender, it is every age. We majority of our people are single. Okay. And they are probably in their like 30s. Okay. Young 30s.
Which is very abnormal in church world broadly.
Yes. That's you should see, we have a 20s group that meets every Sunday, and it is probably our biggest group that's awesome. Meets. It's insane. It's amazing. All of these like singles, young people that are coming in, and it's amazing to see the diversity. Because a lot of churches, like I'll go and visit, some churches, I'll walk in and be like, oh, this is very white, or this is very black. This is not diverse. Mm-hmm. And we are in a space of, holy cow, we are so lucky to have so many different people from so many different backgrounds. Yeah. It does come with its challenges. It comes with, we want to make sure that we're honoring all of these people. Yeah. We want a service that is celebrating the diversity. We want a service that people are seeing themselves at Soul City on stage represented, that it's not I don't feel like I belong here. I look to the stage and can say, I belong here. Yeah. How can we, even in our content, how are we relating to everyone across the board? Yeah. I mean, we have people from, like I said, like the 20s, like my parents go to Soul City. Yeah. Like my parents from their Dutch little
Your
Reformed.
Parents are very hip and cool.
They're very hip and cool. I know Steve and Sheila are pretty cool, but they do, and they love it. Like they get stuff out of it. So how are we like crafting our services in the sense that we're celebrating the diversity, that we're talking to everyone and not just a singular demographic. But I mean, in the city, we hold a lot. We want to be the people that in the city people are looking to for guidance and in situations and social situations and like stepping forward and helping in those things. But yeah, it's a challenge. Like, I mean, not even just the challenge of being in a diverse space, it's a challenge being in the city. Yes. Like we have noise.
Just logistically.
Oh my gosh.
The noise constraints is the one of the biggest pains, because
you guys are close to like apartments or condos.
We have condos right next door.
Yeah.
So we on Sunday mornings,
they're all attending your service whether they want to or not.
Yeah, and they don't. Let me tell you, they do not want to. They do not want to be there. We honor and respect our neighbors. So we have come to an agreement of when we do and do not play music, or AKA turn the house on.
Yep. Got it.
So on Sunday mornings, I have 45 minutes to do a full run through from 8 a.m. to 8:45 when doors happen. That means band. That means sound check. That means running any and all videos, transitions, lighting, everything. I have from 8 a.m. to 8:45. So we get people in, and when I tell you, it's like getting ready and then hit the ground running at 8 a.m. the second we can turn on the sound, and I am like the Tasmanian devil. Like I am like boom, 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 because I'm like, I got to get all this done in 45 minutes. Yeah. 45 minutes to do everything. So it is a very tight ship on Sunday mornings because of the constraints that we have.
That's so interesting.
Which never makes things easy. And when we did that, we weren't always like that. We used to do like 6:30 a.m. call time. Band would take their time. Yeah. Speakers would
spend
take
10 minutes
time.
on the kick drum.
Yeah. And now it's like,
you can't do any of that.
Can't do any of it. And I'm sitting there, you best believe I'm sitting there watching the clock. And the second it's like 7:59, I'm like 3, 2, 1.
That's amazing.
Wake them up. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You just have like a wake up song that just is like your.
And they complain about it every week. And I get it. Some people, I get it. It's hard. But I mean, even at night when band rehearsals on Wednesday nights, we have to shut the house off at a certain point. So it's got its challenges being in the city with that. Because I'll walk into, Passionate Truth like a couple weeks ago. It's like, oh yeah, you guys are just blasting 6 a.m. That must be nice. You guys are ready to go. Yeah. Take your time.
But think about how much creativity. Ingenuity you've gotten to practice to solve your problems.
Well, that goes back to like kind of like what you're saying, like people coming in with this new structure or this new plan when this is the way we always used to do it. When I first started, there was no producer full time. Sure. It was just a volunteer role. Yeah. And so when I came in and started producing, there was that tension of, hey, no, I'm here to actually like, we've got a timeline that like, I understand that we need flow and we want Holy Spirit space and all that, but we need to go. Like we have like a half-hour turnaround between services. We got to get everybody out of our parking lot and out of this and refresh it with new people. Kids have to be picked up, all of that. So it has to be, we have to have a tight ship. And so if we run over on anything, and that's even rehearsals, we are in trouble. So it's me coming in, and I always like, I've gotten a relationship with staff and volunteers to the point where they know it's all, and like, I'm here and I love them. Yeah. But there are Sundays where I'm like, I can't, like, we need to go. Yeah. Like I love you, but like we are running. So it's that tension that I had to hold coming in and being like, I'm going to bring structure and timeline. And I know you may be a little apprehensive to that, but it's all from love. I love you all.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like the foundation that allows you to operate with that kind of efficiency and directness is the relationship, the team culture, and that shared vision of like, hey, we're in this together, and I've got my role, Lindsay's got her role, and like, here we go. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I don't know if I would want to be in a condo next door
to Soul City,
even if I went to the church. I would be like, come on, guys.
Like I go to late service. I don't want to be hearing service at
11 a.m. service.
No spoilers, please.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
It is crazy.
Did it come up? But the way you were just saying it sounded like you guys didn't used to have that 8 a.m. start. It just became more and more of a situation where we would get police showing up to our doors and neighbors calling, and then meetings with aldermen and all that stuff. And we're a church. Yes. We don't want to be a place that people are like, these guys, of course, don't like Soul City. No, we're like, we want to be good neighbors. What can we do? Like, how can we work together? Do complaints still come in sometimes? Yeah. But also there's some Sundays where it's like, it's Easter Sunday. We're going to be going all day. Yes. We're going to be going Saturday night, Friday night. Like we've got stuff going. Yeah. But it's how can we be good neighbors like as well? Like we have a cafe now at Soul City. Like, well, we've always had a cafe, but this is more of like a all-inclusive public, like right? Food. Yeah. So like even with our neighbors, we're like, here's free coffee for a month. Like, please just come on. Like, that's great.
Like, we're trying to be, but still,
Yeah. I was going to ask like, if you guys had, what things have you had to do to woo the neighbors and
it's just making those relationships stronger. It's just making sure that we're being good neighbors. I mean, when you got Timmy Kim on the kick drum, it's going to wake anyone up. So it doesn't matter what time it is. So it's just how are we going to, we love Tim Kim. Shout out to TK. Kim. We love him.
Yeah. Cool. That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
And so real quick, on top of all of that, everything you do for Soul City, all of that, you're also on the core team at Philo Conference. Producing that conference, which is in May.
Yep, coming up.
At Willow Creek.
It is.
Real quick, how has that been leading up to it? Yeah. How are things going? Just like, I don't know, it is not far away.
Maybe give like a tiny little snippet of what Philo is for the audience who maybe doesn't know. Yeah.
Oh man, if you don't know, you're missing out. Philo, first in, last out. So it's an amazing not-for-profit that really just helps support those in the church community that are in the tech space, in the production space. And it's run by our favorite Todd Elliott. But it is an amazing conference. I mean, it's not just the conference. The conference is great. That's the first week of May. But it has cohorts and coaching and podcast and books and just all these resources because the church world is very different. And it's a space that is very unique people that likely need some support sometimes. Not gonna lie, probably. I do. Yeah. But I literally after the first conference that I went to, I was like, holy cow, these are my people. Yeah. Like these are my people. These are the people that get it. Like I can sit here and geek out on production stuff all day, but it's so different because it's the church world, and it's how are you taking care of yourself to be able to keep up in this ministry. But so the Philo conference is coming up in May. That's very exciting. Last year they asked me to be their main session producer. So I accepted. And now this year I'm doing the same thing. And it's really fun. Awesome. I get to help curate the entire main session experience from the second you guys walk in to second you walk out, I get to work with Delwyn and all the music and the worship and Todd and Chelsea on the content, and our faculty this year is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love being able to create spaces for people to experience the Holy Spirit. And I get to do that in my job, but to be able to do that for the tech people is so special. It is so cool because those are the people that don't know, like always get that Sunday to Sunday. So for me to be able to use my talents to like curate that space for my techies, it makes me so happy because it's so special.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing to see. I love walking in every year to the first main session of worship, and I try to like sneak up to that balcony or whatever to watch people, because their posture from day one to the last session in worship is so different, because all of a sudden people are like, oh, I can actually, like, this is for me. This isn't for anybody else, and somebody's doing this so that I can experience.
Yeah, I'm not the one in charge of slides. I'm not the one doing camera shots. I'm not switching. I'm not doing any of that. I'm here to experience with people that are like-minded and do the same thing for me.
Yes.
So it's so cool. It's just such a special thing. Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. We're getting ready.
It's great.
It's
I'm
a
just
lot.
jealous that I was not able to be on the core team at the same time as you, because I left.
We would have killed it.
And you came on the following year.
We can only have 1 6 at a time, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Man. If there were more 6s, maybe it would be. Well, no, Chelsea's a 6. So there's it's only room for 2.
Yeah.
They were
the
like,
Sith.
Yeah.
Only 2 there are.
Oh my gosh.
No more. And no
that's
less.
exactly what it is. I love that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Maybe a good way to wrap up would be to hear just like, what's one thing that you're personally wanting to grow in this season? Like, what's one thing that you're like, hey, I'm trying to invest in this area of my leadership, this area of my personal life, like something that you found to be fruitful and that would encourage people listening.
Yeah. Right now I'm in a season of trying to just continuously work on my leadership. I think there's a lot of times where I just get so focused on the task at hand, right? Especially during busy seasons. I'm like, I head down, blinders up, like I'm just getting things done. And that's with my team, that's with my volunteers, that's with my own spiritual side. And that is where I'm like, no, I need to invest in myself in a spiritual standpoint. Because if my cup is empty, I can't pour into anybody else. Yeah. And so that's really important to me lately is kind of finding, where am I getting spiritually fed that's not within the walls of Soul City?
Yeah, that's good.
Because that's the thing, is in the walls of Soul City, we see transformation weekly, but I'm focusing on how to make it look good and sound good, and how does it look pretty, and how does it translate? So I have to step outside of the walls of Soul City sometimes to get transformed and spiritually fed. So it's focusing on that so that my spiritual health is as best as it can be, because you can't lead anybody else if you're empty.
Yeah.
And then just continuing to tap into my people and just focusing on them and making sure that they feel loved. And like I said, in those busy times, it's hard to kind of do that. It's kind of hard to do that. So I'm kind of really trying to step up in my leadership and leading teams, and not looking to my leaders to always do that. Because I think a lot of times we look to our leaders to be like, oh, well, so-and-so will take care of that. And so-and-so will speak into that or pray for them or whatnot. It's I am equipped. I am a leader at Soul City. And just giving myself the permission to be able to step into that and not be scared of it. I think when you first are kind of in those roles, you kind of are like, no, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a pastor. Like, I'm just here to make sure things like look good.
Yeah.
But in reality, no, we are pastors in our own sense. So it's just pouring into myself so that I can pour into everybody else.
Yeah.
And that is such a challenge. And that's not always easy. And I never thought that it wouldn't. Like, when I first stepped into that, I never thought, oh, this is going to be hard. I just thought, oh, I get to worship 3 times a Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, I'm just going to be like high on life, leaving every single Sunday. Is that the case? Not always. No, probably not. But it's kind of tapping into that and just being able to, take care of myself first so I can take care of others. It's like that whole airplane analogy. What do they say? You fly up every single day.
Yeah.
Put your mask on. Put your mask
put on your own
first.
mask before helping others.
You should know this.
Yeah, I guess so.
He doesn't.
I've never had him fall. I've always wanted to have him fall.
I don't think that's good.
I know, but I just really wanted it. Come on. Just drop one time.
That's good. Well, thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. It was very, very wide-ranging conversation.
We did. We got it.
A lot of
across
good
all
content.
of it. Yeah, we did. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Of course. Bye.